Welcome to this pre-All Hallows Eve recording of the RXP Podcast, where a group of working professionals talk about the games, movies, and shows they love to enjoy in their free time. I'm Alex, and joined, as always, by my co-host, Matt.
What's up?
Tiffany.
It's Agatha season finale, and I'm ready.
And Yasser.
We're in peak spoopy season.
Spoopy.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Agatha fits into that vein, right?
That's
Yeah,
true.
they timed it perfectly.
It's witches.
To finish on All Hallows Eve.
Can I
Eve.
It's like
talk
they
about
planned this or
something? Like, I
Yes.
appreciate Agatha. Like, I wasn't planning on talking about this until you just said that. There's a scary series that's coming out on Netflix tomorrow on Halloween. And
Oh, yeah?
it's a series, right?
Mhm.
So I feel like they should have released it last week, and then you spend the week watching this spooky season. Because
That makes sense.
as soon as tomorrow ends, my interest in horror and like spooky things goes way down. You know what I mean? Like, I spent the last week
Yeah.
watching Bly Manor because I've never watched that one. So like I was catching
yeah.
up, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like, why release something spooky on Halloween?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
So I think I agree with you, but at the same time, I feel like the spoopy season lingers a little bit past Halloween.
Okay.
Like, it's not like midnight hits and like spoopy season's
It's Christmas time,
necessarily
baby.
over.
No,
Especially
it
since,
lingers
like-
as long as the decorations are kept up.
Plus, with Halloween being like in the middle of the week this week,
That's
I
true.
could see like the Halloween weekend being like part of the binge activities. But
Yeah.
I get your point. I do think it would have been better if they did it a week beforehand too.
Yeah.
Like, I will say, it's called Don't Come Home. I'll be watching it tomorrow. Like, I think we're in. I think they've got
Okay.
Maybe
us.
you just like binge the whole thing tomorrow.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. I actually am off the next day, so that could happen. But I've got Bloodborne to play, and I'm trying to finish it in October, and it's not going to happen because this DLC
I have noticed that.
kicking my butt all over the place.
Wow, you're already on the DLC?
Yeah, I'm on the final boss of the DLC. All I have to do after this is like 2 bosses in the main story. I've been rolling. But this Orphan of Kos, I don't think anybody's like gotten to that point. It is
Spoilers.
It's really tough. Like, I've played a lot of the Soulsborne games. It might be the hardest boss I've played. It's really
Wow.
I'm really having a hard time with it. Like, this is like 3 days I've played this boss, and it's really tough.
To be fair, or to be clear for our viewers, he hasn't played the Elden Ring DLC yet.
That's
So
true.
For all those
there could be
of
something
you
worse.
that say like, wait a minute, the Elden Ring DLC is really hard. Just know he hasn't played
That's
it yet.
true.
He's getting there.
I purchased it. I'm that guy. I purchased
Good
it,
level
and I was
setting.
like, I'm going to play this 9-year-old game instead.
We've all been there.
Yeah,
Yep. I mean, it's better for spoopy season, so I get it.
that's true. Very true.
All right. On that note, in honor of the spoopy season, at least as we're recording this, obviously, listeners, you're listening to this long after it's over. We're well into pumpkin season at that point. But until then, we're talking about spoopy things, and in the celebration of all things spoopy, we're talking about the dead, or maybe just long sleeping, right? Like it doesn't necessarily have to be completely dead. Maybe the creators are long past. Maybe the idea is something that probably wouldn't work in the modern day of entertainment. But we're going to be talking about the things, the IPs that have not seen the light of day in any recent time, whether it's been something that's from decades ago or even 9 years ago, right? Are we at the point where 9 years means it's still dormant? Or, Matt, is something like Bloodborne just eternal at this point?
I was going to make that a reason why I could talk about Bloodborne by saying like, hey, Bloodborne 2 should come out. But then I just decided to just inject that into the beginning. But yeah, 9 years, honestly, like going on a decade, I feel like it's historical at this point. I don't know.
Boy.
I mean,
Making us all feel old then.
Isn't that like a life cycle of a console, though? Like, isn't that like...
Yeah.
7
sometimes.
years?
It's a little bit more than that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel
So,
like something from a console's past,
It's not crazy.
Yeah.
I would put the cutoff like closer to 10 years.
Okay.
It's been
I
10
think that's
years.
fair.
It's pretty dormant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't think anyone's thinking like Bloodborne definitely isn't getting a sequel at this time, even though there's like not really been that much traction.
When did Witcher 3 come out? Was that over?
That was like when we were in pharmacy school, so
7 years at least. But like
something like that.
I almost wouldn't count that as dormant because it's like I know Witcher 4 is coming out.
Right.
I don't necessarily, I guess, know if Bloodborne is coming out.
Right.
But
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
But you've been satisfied with the show a little bit now. Like you got something Witcher.
That's true.
in
That's true.
between.
Yeah. That's a good
Yeah.
point.
So the IP itself at least isn't
The
necessarily
IP's
dormant.
not dormant. Maybe just on the gaming side. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, a Bloodborne show.
Imagine.
Could you imagine? Oh my!
I could not. That sounds like
I
it'd be too
couldn't either.
scary.
Yeah.
Fear the
There's a-
old blood.
Here's the old blood. A lot of placentas. A lot of blood.
Ew.
It's just no. And I know. I'm playing it. I
We're
didn't
gonna
know
have to
anything
bleep
about
that.
this game.
You can't say
That's the one-
placentas.
That's the one thing we'll have to bleep it again.
Someone's gonna curse, and we're just gonna let it fly. But placenta is what makes this an explicit
Third
podcast.
time's the charm. And now here's the placenta that we've summoned into this podcast.
That's right.
I just responded to a work email and I came back to you all talking about placentas. What is happening right now?
Just leave it.
Oh
Just
my
leave it.
gosh.
You know, what's more spoopy than one of those? But anyway, to kick
my
things
God.
off, I want to talk about the first IP I want to see brought back. And I know this is something that's had iterations, like, or I guess spin-offs since its original release. But I want to see kind of like the main thing come back in whatever form it may be. You know, could be another, hopefully another movie, could be a show. But Big Hero 6. And so I know Big Hero
Yes.
6 has had spin-offs, but I feel like the IP itself could go beyond what Big Hero 6 started, right? Obviously, it started as this kind of crossover, cultural thing, right? It takes place in San Francisco. It's this kind of cross between these two cultures and two cities, right? With how the city's designed and with how the technology is present, in that world. And I feel like just the idea of having this like cross-cultural like setting, whether you do it with other cities, I feel could still make for an interesting story that doesn't necessarily need to be the same set of characters. And I feel like there is like a premise there where you can use that, especially with its animation design, that could still, carry forth even today. Because for me, it's been so long and I've enjoyed Big Hero 6 so much. And I feel like even in my mind, it lives on despite how old it is, right? We're coming up on the next set of Lorcana called Azurite Sea, and they are introducing Big Hero 6 cards in this set. And seeing some of the art, like seeing those characters, brings back all those memories. And that was part of my inspiration to mention this, because I'm like, this has potential. And I feel like it could be made relevant today, where it's not something that's so dated to say, it's a one and done type of IP.
That's interesting. We're actually coming up exactly on the 10-year anniversary. So good job hitting that
Ooh.
threshold. But I actually, like, to be honest with you, so I watched this recently, like maybe within like 1 or 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think one of the pieces that I remember the most about it is the fact that it was like that culture mix of San Francisco and Tokyo. Even though like that was something that they mentioned, I actually didn't remember that until I looked it up after you brought it up. So I do think that's really interesting. I just wanted to point out that that's not something that I thought of right away.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's obviously the main focus of the story, right, is that brother story, right? It's a family story, and so that is more of that kind of that familial connection is what kind of carries the bulk of it. But I think at least in terms of setting, right, like I'm at the point where, I feel setting for me is a big part of trying to bring things to life, right? And I feel like a lot of kind of big things that pride themselves, I think of stuff like Avatar, where obviously a lot of that IP is based on the fact that, right, Pandora is such a well drafted world, right? Like he's telling, Cameron is telling these stories in this world, and it's only because of the strength of how well designed and thought out it is, right? You can create those stories in that, whether or not you like the story, right? At least that world is so compelling, right? Like even I'm like me as an outsider of those movies, I enjoy how that
That's
kind of ecosystem's created and kind of having this backdrop. And so for me, I really like San Francisco as this kind of culture clash, and I feel like that can be, propagated to be like, oh, maybe it's like Delhi cross like Singapore or something, or like right, these kind of things where obviously they are developed very distinctly, right, as a byproduct of their cultures that they exist in, but then there could be some sort of cool, neat, crossover where it's kind of having these things come together in a new way.
So do you consider like they expanded Disneyland, Disney's California Adventure, to have a San Francisco section that really looks like you're almost in the city, like it's living on eternally in a theme park? Is that not enough for you, Alex?
I've never seen it. I've never been there.
It's wonderful. I met Baymax
well, it must
there.
Be nice.
I went.
Did you?
Yeah, I met him.
It's wonderful.
Yes,
I saw it.
Yeah. Honestly, so I went to Disney California Adventure in Disneyland in February of this year to celebrate Lunar New Year, and it was really cool because the San Francisco part, like they have a lot of it, like they had Asian food in that section. They had Baymax and like Heroes Workshop over there, and just like they had this whole bridge. They literally had the like San Francisco Bridge, which looks like the Golden Gate Bridge mixed with Shinto gates. Like it looks really cool, and it was very pretty at nighttime with it all lit up and everything. And the pier side looked, the Bay Area pier with the water and the building, like it's awesome. So Alex, I wholeheartedly agree. I really hope they make another movie at some point. I'm really like thinking that they're considering the fact that they're working on Toy Story 5 right now because they have a good story idea. I really hope that once they get that story idea for another Big Hero 6 movie, that they like run to the races with that.
Yeah, it could be with or without Baymax too. But
shut up, never.
I guess my question to you, Alex, is like, do you want this to be another movie, or like it sounds like you're in love with the world? Like, how would you best want to experience that world? Another movie, a TV show where it goes to like multiple different cities where it's like a clashing of cultures? Like, what's your ideal situation where you're going back there?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that would be so ambitious to create like a show and having to create like so many, right, crossovers. Like that's the thing where I would love that the most, but I think from a creative standpoint it would be the most challenging to like have to do that for like several
definitely.
episodes of a series. And so I'm like, well, if they could get there and if there was enough like time in production to like create stuff that really brings those to life, sure. But if it's something where it just takes so much creative effort just to make one, I would say, yeah, just another movie would be fine, without, like, personally, I don't need Baymax. It'd be great if he was there. It would probably be harder to, like, justify his existence there unless they tie in the stories. But that's where I'm more of leaning towards the idea where I want that kind of world to exist, but not necessarily need to rely on anything from Big Hero 6, right, to bring it to life. So he can and can't be there depending upon how they decide to be like, oh yeah, he was mass produced, right, as opposed to being this personal health assistant only.
Sweet. It was one of my highlights of Kingdom Hearts 3 was San Francisco, and like from all the trailers we have of Kingdom Hearts 4, that could easily be another world that they bring back to and like expand on it. I would love that. Like it was cool because I had such a small understanding of it. I only watched it once. I really liked the movie, but I haven't seen it like a million times. So maybe they'll bring it back too for Kingdom Hearts 4 2025. Let's go. Just kidding. It's not 2025.
Oh, is that your dead IP?
No, it seems like it. It seems like it. I've got a dead IP. Talking about a video game that that I love. Sly Cooper. No, I'm kidding. Not Sly Cooper.
Oh, but it is Sly Cooper.
But
For
it is
the
Sly
viewers
Cooper.
out there, Alex forbid him from picking Sly Cooper. So go on.
He
Matt.
did. He did. This is probably the earliest IP that I just fell in love with from the N64 era, which is Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie.
Of course.
These games absolutely instrumental to
And
my
Nuts and Bolts.
upbringing. Nope, we don't talk about that one.
don't talk
Nope,
about Nuts and
I
Bolts,
didn't
no.
mention Nuts and Bolts. No, we're really just waiting for Banjo 3. I think a great proof of concept was Playtonic. People that were inspired by Rare back in the day, they came together and they made Yooka-Laylee, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. It lacked some of what I missed. I missed the characters that I grew up with. It's something where I really enjoyed the platforming, really enjoyed the puzzles. I think the humor was great, and I think Playtonic did a really good job, and they're actually re-releasing it for PS5 and Xbox. They're calling it Replayly, which is really fun, really clever. But I feel like the secret sauce were, Gruntilda, and the noises
old
that
hag.
everybody makes. Yeah, like the noise that comes over while you're reading the lines, and just how ridiculous everything is, and the characters that just were things that I grew up on, and I replay that game to death, and I would love to see this get reignited. Microsoft has the IP. They have the power. We know they have the money, and they've got some people that could really make it their own, and I hope they do. Like, I really hope they do. They have a lot of dead franchises that they're bringing back to life. Things like Lionhead's Fable, which were some of my favorite IPs growing up. If Fable wasn't announced and we haven't seen a million trailers up to this point, I would talk about Fable, because that's a dead IP that I can't wait to see a new spin from a new team. I want that treatment for Banjo-Kazooie, because I think there's people out there, creative people, that grew up with it, loved it as a kid, and want to take their spin at it. So that's my dead IP, my wish list. If that ever comes on a direct or a state of play, I will be like freaking out, just freaking out.
I feel like there's so little reason not to do it at this point.
Yeah.
Because, you see platformers, like new platformers coming in nowadays, and you have like these even like new IPs, but also sequels to older IPs, like these newer Ratchet and Clank games that we've had recently. And then you wonder, like, why can't we have a Banjo game? It really does seem like it's the one missing IP that we just haven't seen forever. And Toys for Bob is licensed to work with Microsoft too. So like, it just makes sense to release this, and hopefully it just releases to everybody, because that way whoever gets to enjoy Banjo can play it where they wanted to.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with you. I think that's a great idea.
Those are the exact people that I thought would just make it their own and be good at
and
it.
I hope they get to like make their own game rather than like remaster an older one. I
Right.
think that would be my preference, but I think either way would be really cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference between the two? Would you want like a new game out of them?
I would love a new game. That's what my goal would be. Like, I honestly, Playtonic did awesome with Yooka-Laylee. Like, it was a fun thing. The levels were fun and designed really well, but it just missed that charm of having some of those old characters. I would love to have like those new worlds that I saw that Playtonic did, and just like their spin on a story, but have some of those people that I know and love. So I would love a new story. Tooie, Banjo-Kazooie was the first one. Banjo-Tooie was the second. And then Banjo 3 has always been that Half-Life 3 for N64 kids. And I would love to see just continue the story. Like, finish the trilogy. Do what you think. Like, that would be so awesome. I would love to see that.
Was the Smash DLC not fulfilling of the quota to see him come back?
I did love that. Hey, I smashed that buy button. I bought it, and I played as Banjo all the time. It was really, really fun. It was really, really inventive. And that's the beautiful part about it, because I would hope, and I think Microsoft is getting to this. Microsoft having the IP, I know, can be a death sentence to a lot of people, but I feel like Banjo is so far more than an Xbox like owned property. Like, this is something that I would want on every single platform. I want kids who have just a Nintendo Switch be able to have Banjo 3E, because honestly, it's one of those things where when I had an N64, I had Super Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie. I played Banjo-Kazooie way more. Like I love Banjo-Kazooie way more than Super Mario 64, even though both of them are probably my top 5 games of all time. Banjo-Kazooie just took the cake for me. So I would love to see this in as many hands as possible. But yeah, that Smash DLC, listen, Banjo is alive out there. Someone is working on it. I just know it. And I can't wait to see it in like 30 years.
All right, so Microsoft's going to put it on the leapfrog then.
That's right.
Okay.
I hope so.
That's great.
Yeah. One of those like cassettes that the kids have to put in. Yeah.
All right. Anyone next? Anyone got the dead IP that they want revivified?
So I have one that's like half dead, like half it is in the grave.
Half dead.
Yeah, I mean, because
Half in the grave. Oh no.
Well, okay,
Getting
guys, hear me
into
out.
Let me
into
tell
the
you about
grave.
Concord.
Hear me out.
But that's like full in the
Oh,
grave.
yeah.
Yeah, that's like
Forget
fully. I don't care about Concord. I loved Pokemon Pinball growing up.
Oh wow.
And Pokemon is thriving, okay? Like Pokemon TCG Pocket just came out. Like everyone's living their best life. We're all excited for Pokemon ZA. Like, I'm going to take a day off on work to play that game when it comes out next year. But
Everyone
Pokemon
loves
Pinball,
pizza.
Pokemon Pinball and yeah, exactly, pizza. Pokemon Pinball and Pokemon Picross, like these two niche games in the Pokemon universe need to come back or need to be available for me to buy on current console. Like I would absolutely adore that. I don't know what it do people hate pinball now? I mean, I guess it's like not a big thing even though barcades are around, and like I like playing pinball every once in a while.
Honestly, now that you say it, and I know this, like Pokemon Pinball is specifically for Nintendo, but I'm like, with the haptics on the DualSense, like having a pinball game, I feel like you could easily like try to replicate like the physical pinball feeling. So even though I never would think a Pokemon Pinball would appear on PlayStation, if you could somehow play a Pokemon Pinball with DualSense haptics like built into it, I think that would get you really close to like almost the physical like pinball machine feeling. And
I
that
mean,
would be
could you
fantastic.
imagine if someone created like a roguelite pinball game or
I can
something?
imagine that, yeah.
Like
Listen, everything is
something like
out the
that?
window. We literally have a roguelite poker game that is
Yeah.
like vying for game of the year over here for me.
Yeah.
Like the sky is the limit. You can have
That's like
roguelite to
2025
anything.
roguelite
Yeah.
pinball. It's happening.
Yeah,
we
oh
just
my god.
ditched some poor devs playing.
Yeah, I'm gonna be like Nostradamus up in here. Like it's just gonna be, that's gonna be on the radar. But yeah, so Pokemon Pinball, like that was such a blast. And then also like I kind of just spontaneously threw in Pokemon Picross. Picross is like this puzzle game where you just like tap on squares in numerical order, almost like Sudoku. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's popular in Japan. And there was a themed Pokemon Picross for the Nintendo DS, and I was super into it because you basically make pixel photos based on the numbers on the side of the board. Like no wait. It's not like Sudoku. It's like Minesweeper. It's actually like Minesweeper. That's how I would describe it. And then people are going to be like, what's Minesweeper? Because apparently I'm like 80 years old.
Yeah, what's
And
space pinball? No one knows what
Yeah.
that is.
So yeah, I really miss those two games or two iterations, and it'd just be awesome for it to be available,
I feel like those are gonna stay dead, but hey, I'm rooting for you.
Yeah, thanks. I think they are too. I mean, also, I think one of the highlights of it is that both of those like specific IPs could be micro games. You know what I mean? Like you're not gonna binge. I mean, I guess you could
Sure.
binge playing pinball, but like it's like let me play a few rounds and then I'll move on. So
well,
maybe
it sounds like mobile games, really.
yeah. I mean, I'd take a mobile version.
I'm pretty sure Pokemon has a version of that in mobile. That second game that you were describing.
Picross.
Yeah, I know it's not like actually Picross, but like I think they have mobile Pokemon games right now that are similar to that.
I mean, they have like a Pokemon Bejeweled, but like I don't want that.
yeah, maybe that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. I mean,
I think between Pokemon Pinball and Pokemon Picross, I think Pokemon Picross is like way more likely to happen because there is a very cult following for Picross. I didn't know about this, but another
Really?
another podcast that I listened to, they had a full like hour and a half episode just about Picross, and like they brought in guests where they do all sorts of Picross. I'm like, what is happening? I had no idea. I was just looking up the most recent Picross game was when the Switch got released. They made Picross S. So I feel like Switch 2 comes around.
It's not even dead. It's not even dormant then.
It's barely dormant.
Okay, so that's what you meant by
the
half
Pokemon
dead.
No.
though, is
Pokemon
way dead, has been way dead.
yeah.
You have a Pokemon
I
Day or
see.
something like Pokemon Picross. I feel like can definitely happen. That could be cool. I never got into either of those, but I would totally be down
pinball. Pinball's where it's at.
Yeah.
Fun fact: I have a colleague that plays professional pinball.
What?
Oh,
Like, she goes to
Really?
like an arcade bar and they have like tournaments, and she's apparently a badass at it. So
Wow.
hey, pinball's still alive in some circles.
listen, I believe it. I mean, I went to a
I
barcade
suck at pinball.
like a couple years ago, and like I had a blast, spending $20 just with quarters playing pinball games.
we have a pinball museum in
Yes,
this town. And it's
I've
really
been.
fun. It's really fun
Yeah.
to go to because it's more fun just to see the really old ones because like they're made out of wood. It's like way more mechanical, less metal like objects. So like not as many springs, not as many whatever. And like seeing
And
how
lights, I'd
over
imagine.
time, it's all changed to like an electronic display and like things are less analog. I think that's really fun. But man, am I trash at pinball? Like even if I played every single pinball machine in there, if I had one life, I'd be done in like 6 minutes. Like I would I lose so quick, but I can definitely appreciate it. I'm impressed by your colleague that actually competes in something like that.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. I have never played pinball, to be completely honest with y'all.
Those are the people,
but it sounds incredibly difficult.
those are like your colleague is that same person that like say you're getting through orientation and they ask you the most dreaded question ever of, hey, name a fun fact. Your colleague is definitely the person that's going to be right in front of me. She's going to be like, yeah, I actually compete in a pinball competition. And I'm going to be like, what am I supposed to say? Like, how can I possibly outdo this?
Now, this is how you improve your pinball game. It's one simple rule. Don't tilt.
Oh,
There you go.
no.
See, he knew. He knew.
No, I went the opposite.
He said tilt.
No, don't. Yeah, don't tilt. Well, I thought you were finishing my
okay.
sentence. I don't know how that's gonna come out in the end.
Yeah, I totally was like,
It's
oh, okay,
linked.
tilt. Got it. Good.
All right, I guess I'll go ahead and enter the ring here. So mine is one that maybe not everyone here knows too much about or has too much experience with, but I could be wrong. I'm gonna play a soundboard that our viewers will not be able to hear, but I will repeat it for y'all. EA Sports big. So my dead IP or IPs, I'd
That
say,
was almost the
are-
exact same.
See, I reproduced it, right? Pretty good.
It was so good.
Are the NBA and NFL Street games.
Oh,
Those
so
were like
good.
the arcade versions of the like sim basketball and football games that we have today. And this publisher also, or I think developer, also made games for like snowboarding and other sports. And the games that they would make would be so fun and just casual in comparison to what we have nowadays, where we have like Madden games and NBA 2K games that are just filled with microtransactions and having to play like every day to get the cards that you want, et cetera, et cetera. While these were like the more casual games that were so easy to kind of jump into, not even having to need to know like that much about basketball and football. And they were just so much fun. It was a lot like NBA Jam was to a lot of people. So I think you can at least relate to that, Tiffany. But this franchise has been dormant for at least 10 years. I want to say probably mid 2000s is when I last saw like these IPs really be that popular. And so I really want those to come back, because nowadays we don't have very much competition with a lot of the sports games. Madden doesn't have competition because of like licensing, but even NBA 2K doesn't have competition because EA left the market because their games were so bad. So why not re-enter the market, but with NBA Street rather than an NBA Live? Then you have your own niche, and I think a lot of people would be really excited for those, at least sports fans. So that's my contribution.
No, I definitely agree with the arcade sports of like having the lower investment like version still around, because I feel like I'm in the same boat, or I'm in that boat that you mentioned, where I'm like, I have no interest in kind of like the main line yearly installments, but if they had those like lower investment, more casual versions of the games where it's like, hey, here's like a $40 version, but it's, you know, just that, right, 3-on-3, or, you know, the pickup style games where it's not, you're not playing like professionally, you're just playing like in a New York, you know, city downtown core, or like you're just like in Atlanta in someone's backyard, you know, that kind of stuff would be so much more appealing, because, you know, I'm not an avid follower like of these professional sports, but I do enjoy the sport like in and of itself. So that's something where I'm like, you could get me if it is that casual level, because I could see myself doing that in real life as opposed to like going to an actual game.
Yeah, I remember NBA Street had like dunk contests too that you can play, and oh my god, those were so much fun.
I played so much NFL Street, like so much on the GameCube. I like, it's probably like the most vivid memory is just the cover art for NFL Street. Like, it had Shannon Sharp and Ricky Williams, and it was just awesome. Like, they look like Gears of War players. Like, it's like Dom just walking down, and he's just holding the football, and it was so much fun. Like, it's so much more fun to play NFL Street than play Madden with somebody else. Because, like, Madden, I'm not good at Madden. I'm not good at college football games. Like, they're very fun. I enjoy football. I watch football all the time. I talk about football all the time. But I'm not good at those because I'm not really in it to be a sim game. Like, it's not as fun to me. In the same way, when we talk about like racing games, I'm not into Gran Turismo. I'm not into the traditional Forza. Forza Horizon, though, put me in Mexico. Oh boy, like I'm there, and I will
play
on
a Hot Wheels track.
Yeah, and Yasser and I, exactly. Lego, let's go. So it's that. I think we need some of that. We need the diversity of, you know, not everybody is going to be the Alex type that wants to play racing games for racing games and like min-maxing and fine-tuning a car.
Whoa!
Don't care about that.
He's like an avid Need for Speed guy. What are we talking about?
Listen, I'm talking about, I'm gonna put a Sly Cooper decal on this this Warthog from Halo, and I'm gonna go take that jump. You know, like we're gonna have more fun on the Forza Horizon side of things.
Matt, I enjoy, you know, the hardcore racing. Like, I like that because, as you said, I do enjoy racing when it is the sport. Like, I think there's a lot that goes into it, right? Not necessarily does it replicate real life, right? Because obviously racing in real world conditions is so much more in terms of, you know, just the body physics, right? And the exhaustion on you. But in that line, I like exactly how you brought up stuff like Forza and Forza Horizon, because my other IP ties directly into that.
Ooh.
And that's MotorStorm. So
okay.
I know y'all probably didn't play it, but this was a arcade racer on PS3 and technically the PSP. There was a PSP version, but this is very non-serious. You know, you had, I think it was like 3 or 4 different classes of vehicles, like bikes, kind of big rigs, small kind of agile like dirt vehicles, and this was in the vein of Burnout. So it's like a game about speed
Burnout
and pushing your vehicle to limit while like boosting as much as possible. But if you overboost, right, you overheat and explode. So this is that type of style of racing where it's like, right, there's no power-ups, There's nothing serious about this. You're racing, in every installment had a different theme. So the original MotorStorm was obviously desert themed. They had a tropical themed one called Pacific Rift. The handheld one was ice themed, and then the final one, Apocalypse, was like urban setting. And so each one of the installments kind of played into a different type of like locale, right, in its racing. But the racing stayed pretty much the same. With Apocalypse, which is the one I played the most, it had a fun mechanic where if you would go through water, right, it would reduce your engine heat. So it would there was some skill with boosting, but then hitting the puddles as you're boosting, right, to keep your engine temperature down, and so you could boost for longer. And so this was like that level of arcade racing where I'm like, I think this hits the sweet spot because it's in between like kart racers that have items, right, and typically those are based around, right, the racing is really using the items to your advantage, and then it's right like in between, the hardcore sim where it's more about the racing skill, but it doesn't go as hard as, right, tuning your vehicle or kind of finding the exact right racing line. So this is something that I've really enjoyed, right, as an IP, and it's something that the dev studio that developed it is long gone, so the hopes of it ever coming back is probably very zero at this point. But Sony
very
still
zero.
owns, very zero.
Double
Sony's, I mean, maybe MotorStorm Zero Gravity, maybe that could be the next one, goes to space or something. But
Very sick.
yeah, that is something where I'm like, they have the IP, maybe it comes back. When MotorStorm came out on PS3, it was part of their push to see, like, look how good games can look, right? Because it was like a 2006 launch title, and it was kind of pushing the boundaries of graphics at that time for what physical destruction can look like and everything. So I want it back, right? Like at this point, I'm kind of like struggling to find those arcade racers. I played Disney Speedstorm when that came out last year. That's a kart racer.
Oh my gosh, that was so good.
Yeah, I've played stuff like Hot Wheels Turbocharged, right? Like they've released some Hot Wheel arcade racers, but I'm really looking for that. And I guess it goes in line with Burnout too. Like we're just not getting that type of arcade racer these days. So I really want those to come back, because sometimes, I'm just in the mood to race, but not necessarily like hitting that Gran Turismo track, trying to do my, practice laps, do my, my qualifying time, trying to get that pole position. Like I'm not always down for that, though. That does hit every once in a while. But bring it back, bring back MotorStorm, and by proxy, bring back Burnout, please.
Yeah, no, I'm totally on board with that. I feel like in general, sports, like casual sports games, and that I would include racing in,
Absolutely,
just needs to come back,
Yeah.
And I also include something that I sent to Matt recently that I saw on Reddit, which is Need for Speed Underground. Like, where are these like casual sports games that we grew up with that everybody seemed to enjoy, that somehow they feel like they're just not going to get the investment back, the return on investment? I don't see it. I don't know why, but someone out there is telling them not to make these games, and I need to know why.
All right.
Okay, that was way too much of a silence.
I mean, it'll cut out. Yeah, who's got another IP? Is there another dead IP that needs to be Kuraga'd here?
I'm gonna be honest, I really liked Jak and Daxter growing up. Like that was one of my first, like, I don't know, like platform, not even a platformer. What kind of game? I don't. You know what? Honestly, I just have so much nostalgia for that game, but I honestly don't even remember what that game is like, and I want it to come back just so I can replay a nicer looking version. Is that too vague?
I mean, like a
I love Jak
remake.
and
So you just
Daxter.
want a remake?
Yeah, I do want a remake.
Honestly, like that whole vein of like time with Sly Cooper, Jak and Daxter, Taz. Wait, what was it? No, Tak and the Power of Juju. Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. Like all those
There you
were
go.
like so good. Honestly, I almost put Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. But that was going to be my third stretch if I had to talk about it. But I completely agree with you. I think those games, I would love to just have like this resurgence of I don't know, character platformers. Is that like a good way to
Yes.
to like describe them?
Yes.
I
Alongside Banjo.
exactly. Like it's a great time for Banjo. You know, we've really had Ratchet and Clank, and they have stuck around, and we keep getting iterations of them, which is great. And honestly, the PS5 Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, fantastic. Like showing how something could be elevated from its 1990s, early 2000s counterparts. I would love to see that treatment for Jack and Daxter, to see that with Sly Cooper, to see that with Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, even Tack and the Power of Juju, like, which is a hilarious game. I feel like I talk about that game more often than I should for a game that I didn't really like all that much, but really fun concept. But yeah, there's something nostalgic about that, but I feel like we could just see what does that look like for a PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X or PC where we're at now. Like, how far can we expand this quality of life and make it really good? Because Rift Apart was awesome. Like, it is so pretty and so good, and that storytelling is so good and so effective. I would love to see that with all the things we grew up on.
So why do you think that we don't see some of these IPs?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know.
I would say, and I feel like this is probably the biggest nail in the coffin for all of these, is that especially even if the creatives are still around in the industry, it's that the creatives don't want to make those anymore. And I think that's probably like the biggest like gatekeeper, because obviously the easiest route would be for the original people, if they're still working, right, to just pick that mantle back up, right, to continue it. But at the same time, you know, are there people that if it's not the original creators, do other people want to create it, right? Or is it the idea that instead of going back to something that's been established, right, and that had a decade-long run of existence and, you know, successful popularity, that they're like, well, we could go back to that, but I want to create something new. And maybe that could be the thing, right? Because especially as a creative, it's kind of hard to say, well, I really loved that in the past, but what if I could do that but make my own version of it, right? So it doesn't necessarily use the IP, and it's not necessarily a new version of it, but it's that mantra, but just my own kind of code.
Like the essence of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I feel like you don't necessarily need to have those same developers come out of nowhere and come back and make these games again. Because, like, how about the developers that grew up with these games? Yeah. That they love those games, and now they're making games. Why aren't they making these types of IPs? Games. And it doesn't even have to be, like, Pokemon-centric, or it doesn't have to be Sly or Banjo or Need for Speed-centric. Why not just, like, have their own IP, but with the similar essence, like you're saying? I'm just curious why we don't see more of these types of genres in the current landscape versus... We saw a lot of them back in the day. In a lot of these genres that we've talked about, we didn't just have one or two, we had a bunch of them. And so why I just wonder what that like shift was that made it so that we go more into like these like third person cinematic games and these like sim related games. Like, what was the shift that really caused that, you think?
I wonder if, like, this was such a huge fad when we were growing up of character platformers, them just saturating the market, right? Yeah. You look at the indie space now, the people that are making indie games, a lot of them are 8-bit, 16-bit from that earlier era.
That's
maybe
true.
Maybe one of these things of like 10 years down the road, people that are in these new studios, these indie developers are like, hey, we're not doing 8 and 16-bit. Let's start doing, you know, small 3D models and start doing these character platformers. So I wonder if the indie just ecosystem will shift a little bit towards that as we get a little bit older. I don't know how old we have to get though. Like, sheesh, like we'll be 40, you know, sooner than later. Like, how long do I have to wait?
It's as old as when you have one foot in the grave already.
That's right.
That's how old you have to get.
My grandkids will benefit from Banjo 3E.
Yeah, maybe that's... Oh, go ahead, Tiffany. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, you know, the Kena Bridge of Spirits had the essence
That's a good point.
of those games. Like, honestly,
so
when I was playing it, I was like, this is one of the games from my past,
Yeah.
and this is hard.
And it was beautiful. And it was modern.
Yes.
Like it wasn't just like, oh, this is, you know how like every reviewer is like, oh, this is the prettiest PS2 game. Like it didn't feel like a PS2 game in essence. Like it was more than just a pretty face. Like it was, the combat was fun and like the collectibles were fun. It was freaking hard, but like beyond that, it was so good. I would love to see more Kena Bridge of Spirits. That was another game that I thought of, but I'm like, it literally happened this generation. It just feels like a long time.
Yeah.
I can't wait for Kena 2 though. To see what Ember Labs does, I would love for them to go back to it and make like just their adjustments. I think Kena 2 could be really special, I hope.
Are they actually doing that for sure?
I don't know. I hope they are.
I don't know, but those like those little creatures were just so adorable.
That you thought that those were adorable, and then I tried to get you to do Tinykin, and you're like, ugh.
I mean,
like, these are the same. This is basically the same. Like,
no,
Tinykin
but
is so
they're
cute.
not. They're not eyeballs.
That's
Matt, I
true.
platted that game. Okay,
I know you
don't
did.
even.
I know you did, but
don't
it took some convincing. That's all I'm saying.
It did. I was like, ew, little like Mike Wazowski's.
That's true. You know what would take a lot of convincing? Bringing up this game that I played a ton as a kid. A lot of people played GoldenEye. I played GoldenEye a lot as a kid. But the game that just destroyed LAN parties outside of Halo, outside of GoldenEye, was Time Splitters 2. Now,
oh my god, I forgot about that.
What
game.
you're saying, I know. This is going to unlock some memories. Time Splitters 1 came out right at the turn of the millennia, 2000. Time Splitters 2 came out just a couple years later. A couple years later, Time Splitters Future Perfect came out, and then it was gone. And we haven't seen anything of it since. This is something that they are releasing this on PlayStation Premium, I think, to where you can play, I think, Time Splitters or Time Splitters 2, one of the two. Fantastic multiplayer, just really, really inventive, meant to be played with friends for like ridiculous sake. If you don't remember Time Splitters 2, you are a time traveler and you're going into different worlds, and you have a lot of futuristic weapons, and it changes your appearance on which world you're going to, like very Kingdom Hearts-esque. And it's just a ton of fun, it has a ton of humor, and I would love to see a modern spin on that. Like I would love to see, you know, this random person who really doesn't speak too much go into very overly serious situations dressed up as Abraham Lincoln because you're around the Civil War era. Like, it is just ridiculous fun. And it was a first-person shooter that was really good. Like, it was a good first-person shooter, and the multiplayer was ridiculous. And just, like, whatever you could imagine for a custom rule, you could do. Like, me and my friend had a ton of fun just figuring out, like, random games that we could play. And I just really, really loved it. I would love to see that come back, because this is another thing when we're talking about, like, casual sports games. You know, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 came out, and man, I know I'm going to get old. You know, like, I'm not playing that. Like, no, like, I'm basically like telling people to get off my yard at this point. Like, I'm not going back to Black Ops 6.
I have to put a pause on this because I have some bad news for you.
Oh no.
That there was a dev studio that was working on a new Time Splitters, but it
Really?
was
Got canceled, right?
It was shut down as
Oh,
part of
that's
the
too
Embracer
bad.
Group layoffs and studio
Unbelievable. Okay.
closures. So
Well-
honestly, it was on track to come back in some form.
But here's the
But
thing.
it is dead
That means it could come back at some point. You know, like, things get canceled all the time. Remember, in our last episode, we were talking about a movie, the Plants vs. Zombies, and Tiffany's like, I need that, and it's like, oh, it got canceled in 2017, but it could go somewhere else. You never know. I'm holding out
Yep.
hope.
Yeah, Anya
Yeah.
Taylor-Joy is pea shooter.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's a great reference on the Time Splitters. Great call out. I remember loving that game too. I feel like the like LAN FPS games
It's
have
dead.
been so far and few in between nowadays. Yeah, they're just like dead now.
Yeah.
And I do like wonder how we can like get those back, because I think basically the problem now with kind of trying to reinvent that magic is much of the magic was you playing side by side with a bunch of friends on like a 4-player split screen.
That's
And
true.
I wonder, like, can you just add 4-player split screen online? Like, why not? You know,
Yeah.
like
Oh,
where you can
man.
see your friend's screen when they're like in their house and you're in yours. I feel like that could be a way to kind of revitalize split screen multiplayer. But otherwise, like, I don't see how you can like recapture that magic, because I feel like just having it be a regular online multiplayer game, it's going to get drowned out by so many FPSs that we have nowadays that are just trying to reinvent the wheel every time too. So I feel like that's the only way that it can really stand out. But in general, I feel like it's going to be like a lost genre in a lot of ways. That casual split screen multiplayer game that you can just have fun in and have like drinking games with.
Like a decade ago, so in 2014, they released a game called Screen Cheat. That was
Yeah, we
like
played this game.
that was the chance. That was the chance.
Yeah.
Like, man, it is fun. Like that. Like, honestly, playing that game together, like that brought back some of that same nostalgia of like what you feel, like
sure.
just the madness
Yeah.
and chaos of it. I think that would be great. But like, really, to my point is, I enjoy first person shooters. I don't care to play Call of Duty or really any sort of like very competitive shooter, because it's just not my genre anymore. So I would rather just like have like a very ridiculous story, not serious, like not talking about like, you know, modern terrorism or anything. No, I'd rather like try to prevent the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Like, bring me to something I care about, all right? Make me fight aliens. That's true.
Well, in a lot
maybe
of
that's my
ways,
thing.
like Call of Duty is that casual shooter experience that you're asking about, but it sounds like you want it to be more of a casual story,
Right.
where you can play like the single player
Exactly.
portion of it without taking it too seriously, rather than like the multiplayer of it.
Because here's the thing, Yasser, like you and I, we have a hit list of games that we're going to play, right? When we have
Right.
Call of Duty, it's really not Call of Duty, it's zombies. Like that's my genre. Like something ridiculous and fun. That's what I'm all about. Maybe not so much like multiplayer anymore. You know, where like, remember back in the day where you had Turtle Beach headsets and you thought you were like the big cheese because you're like, oh, I can hear footsteps. And it's like, oh, now everybody can hear footsteps. And you're 30. Welcome. It's not fun here.
All right. Anyone else with the dead IP now? We've dug it all up and brought it to the light.
And let
Yeah,
it
it
be
just needs some
reborn.
TLC, you know? Someone to
Okay.
nurture it.
Yeah, it's like archaeology. You have the little tiny brushes where you're like brushing the dust off the bones. You're like, it's okay. You're still as good as you once were. I just gotta brush off this 1,000-year-old, 100,000-year-old dust from the crevices.
That's
All right.
Is that what you're
well,
doing when you're like brushing T-Rex's fossils?
You're,
Yeah. Once
You're talking
once
to
you
them?
crack that rock,
It's like a house
you're
plant.
just there with your tiny little violins, your miniature violin-sized brush, just getting the dust out of the cracks. Well, hopefully we don't turn into dinosaurs before these IPs come back in some way, shape, or form, right? Maybe not Banjo though. Banjo's probably dead, but hopefully.
why would you say
Ouch.
that right at the end?
No, I can't. If anything, I feel like Banjo probably has the biggest chance of coming back more than any
Yeah, I
of
think so.
these. Especially because it had that resurgence right in that Smash DLC. All I feel like all of those games that were Smash DLC is having something big coming out in the future. Even Minecraft with its movie, right? Like they all have
that's
something in the
true.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like Metal Gear Solid is having that Delta remake, we're getting a
yeah.
Kingdom Hearts
Mhm.
4. I'm calling it now here, folks. Sakurai was right all along. All the Smash characters were just teasers for new games for these.
Wow. I could see it.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VII
And,
Rebirth.
Signed right here under the Illuminati.
I love how you like put him down,
petition.
and now you're like giving him false hope.
I know. I'm gonna
No,
go.
I truly believe it. I'm just saying, Matt, sign this petition. It's just, and then stamp it with the Illuminati symbol. It all makes sense.
Can I also share that like I played ukulele? I am going to buy Replay E because it's like, you know what? I want them to see there are still people buying
There's
these
still
things.
support.
Like,
yeah.
please keep doing this. I will pay for it as many times as I have to.
Exactly. Our wallets speak as well
Yeah.
as our social media. You know, we're gonna keep praising or singing the praises that is Banjo and Kazooie, and you know, hopefully it's
Manifesting.
Microsoft sees the signs. It's the clarion call to bring these IPs back. Thank you all for listening to this episode of the RXP Podcast. If you enjoyed it, you know, please like and subscribe for more episodes. Check out our playlist for other topics such as the good and the bad and the missing IP adaptations. That was our previous episode. And thank you, Grandmaster Doug, for the tunes. And until next time, take care.
Yeah, I'm gonna be like Nostradamus up in here.
It's dead.